Welcome, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a monument that has captivated humanity for millennia, a structure so iconic it's the only one of the original seven wonders of the ancient world, largely intact.
Indeed, it's a testament to ancient ingenuity and sheer scale,
Hmm.
often shrouded in mystery and wild speculation, but, with fascinating new discoveries constantly shedding light on its true nature.
That's right. We're talking about the Great Pyramid of Giza. You've sent us some incredible sources, everything from detailed Wikipedia entries to insights from the World History Encyclopedia. Our mission today is to, well, cut through the noise, extract the most important nuggets, and arm you with a comprehensive understanding of this colossal achievement.
We'll explore its monumental purpose, delve into the latest theories on how it was built, illuminate the lives of those who constructed it, and yeah, even navigate some of the bizarre legends and historical misinterpretations that have accumulated over its, 4,600-year history. You're in for a journey through stone, science, and some surprising stories.
Okay, so to truly unpack the Great Pyramid, perhaps the best place to begin is simply by grasping its monumental scale. What exactly are we dealing with here in terms of sheer size and significance?
Well, what's truly remarkable is just how massive and enduring this structure remains. It is, of course, the largest Egyptian pyramid, serving as the tomb of Pharaoh Khufu, who ruled during the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom.
Right, Fourth Dynasty.
It was built around 2600 BC, over an estimated 26 years, making it incredibly ancient, the oldest of the seven wonders, and uniquely, the only one still standing in its near original form.
And the raw numbers are just, well, mind-boggling. Originally, it stood at 146.6 meters, that's 481 feet,
Yeah.
making it the world's tallest human-made structure for over 3,800 years. Even today, after losing most of its smooth white limestone casing, it's still 138.5 meters tall.
Still huge.
Its base stretches roughly 230.3 meters square, giving it a staggering volume of about 2.6 million cubic meters. We're talking about an estimated 2.3 million large stone blocks, collectively weighing around 6 million tons.
And that volume, by the way, it does include an internal helic, which they sort of incorporated into the design. But it's the precision, as much as the sheer scale, that truly astounds.
Uh-huh.
The base was squared to a mean corner error of only 12 seconds of arc. That's less than a quarter of a degree.
Wow.
And the four sides vary by an average of only 58 millimeters in length. Just incredible.
That level of accuracy achieved over 4,500 years ago without, any of our modern tools, it truly pushes the boundaries of what we thought ancient civilizations were capable of. It suggests a sophisticated understanding of mathematics and planning that still challenges us to fully comprehend.
Definitely.
So given this incredible effort, what was the primary purpose of such a monumental undertaking?
Well, the Great Pyramid was fundamentally Khufu's tomb, and it still contains his granite sarcophagus. Like other elite Egyptian tombs, it served four main purposes: housing the deceased, protecting the body and grave goods, allowing access for mortuary cult practices, and serving as a monumental display of the deceased's prestige. Interestingly, though, unlike later pyramids, its internal chambers lack inscriptions and decorations, which was actually the norm for Egyptian tombs of the 4th to late 5th dynasty. It predates the custom of inscribing pyramids with text by over 200 years.
Huh. But the complex around it was lavishly decorated,
right.
right? Which seemed to contrast with the stark interior of the pyramid itself. What does that tell us about its overall function?
Exactly. Yeah, the pyramid complex included two highly decorated temples. The Pyramid Temple was dedicated to Khufu's 30th Jubilee, his said festival, with scenes depicting rituals, high-ranking officials, priests. The Valley Temple, though largely unexcavated, showed detailed nautical scenes and personifications of Khufu's estates, suggesting, a successful interment and a robust mortuary cult that operated for hundreds of years. And this raises a fascinating point. If the tomb itself was found largely empty or undecorated, what does that imply about the nature of this long-lasting mortuary cult? It suggests their focus might have been more on the public rituals and the king's continued divine presence, rather than just the physical resting place itself.
Right, the performance outside the pyramid. Okay, so one of the biggest questions surrounding the Great Pyramid is its exact age. How do we date something so incredibly ancient, especially when so much time has passed?
Well, there are two primary approaches. First, We can indirectly date it by attributing it to Khufu and then establishing his chronological age through archaeological and textual evidence.
Right, based on king lists and things like that.
Exactly. Most recent estimates using this method place Khufu and his pyramid somewhere between 2700 and 2500 BC.
Okay. And the second approach is more direct, using modern scientific techniques like radiocarbon dating. What have we learned from that, and are there any unique challenges when applying it to something so old?
Yeah. Radiocarbon dating of mortar samples taken back in 1984 and 1995, which contains organic material like charcoal from fires used in its preparation, those yielded dates between 2871 and 12604 BC.
Sure.
However, there's what's called the old wood problem here.
Oh, right.
This means if the organic material used in the mortar came from a very old tree or was maybe recycled from older structures, the radiocarbon date would appear older than the actual construction date.
Makes sense.
So reanalysis of the younger samples gave a more refined completion date between 2620 and 2484 BC, probably closer to the mark.
That distinction between the material's age and the construction date is a crucial nuance. But the story of that cedar plank from the Queen's chamber introduces a truly compelling anomaly, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Yeah, back in 1872, Wayman Dixon found a cedar plank in one of the Queen's chamber's so-called air shafts. This plank was then lost for decades, only to be rediscovered in 2020. When it was finally radiocarbon dated, it returned to date between 3341 and 3094 BC.
Wow.
Over 500 years older than Khufu's reign.
That's significant.
Yeah. This suggests the wood either came from the very heartwood of an exceptionally long-lived tree, or it was recycled and reused for centuries before becoming part of the pyramid. It's a tiny piece that opens up, big questions about the materials used.
Speaking of materials and construction, who exactly built this marvel? This seems to have been a point of contention even in ancient times, leading to some pretty persistent myths.
Indeed. Historically, classical authors like Herodotus, who visited Egypt in the 5th century BC, attributed it to Khufu, whom he called Cheops.
Right, Cheops.
However, Herodotus mistakenly placed Khufu's reign after the Ramesside period, much later than it actually was. He also depicted Khufu as a tyrannical king, which unfortunately fueled the pervasive idea that such buildings could only be constructed through cruel exploitation and slave labor.
Yeah, that image really stuck.
It did. Herodotus even claimed 100,000 laborers worked in 3-month shifts for 20 years.
And he had that rather peculiar story about an inscription on the outside, didn't he? About vegetables.
He did, yeah. Herodotus claimed he saw an inscription on the outside of the pyramid indicating the huge amount of radishes, garlic, and onions consumed by the workers. Later, Diodorus Siculus, who visited Egypt in the 1st century BC and aimed to distance himself from Herodotus's marvelous tales, still reported a similar inscription, listing costs for vegetables and purgatives.
Purgatives, okay.
Yeah. This suggests that Herodotus's interpreters might have simply misread hieroglyphs, or perhaps even deliberately misled him, maybe referencing a note about later restoration work rather than actual worker provisions. We just don't know for sure.
It sounds like a lot of historical facts were, well, maybe not so factual, and misinformation just kind of kept growing. What about later interpretations of the pyramid's purpose? Any other weird ones?
Oh, yeah. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the misinterpretations only grew more bizarre over time. During late antiquity, a peculiar idea gained widespread popularity. The pyramids became Joseph's granaries.
As in biblical Joseph.
Yeah, the one who stored grain in Egypt. Egeria, a Christian pilgrim in the late 4th century AD, recorded seeing many pyramids which Joseph made in order to store corn.
No way.
This was reinforced by Stephanos of Byzantium, who linguistically linked pyramid to the Greek word pyros, meaning wheat. It just shows how quickly a monument's true history can be overshadowed by popular but, incorrect narratives.
That's quite a leap from a pharaoh's tomb to biblical granaries.
And what about the famous stories of people actually entering the pyramids centuries ago, like Al-Mamun?
Right. The most notable is the account of the Abbasid Caliph Al-Mamun, who is said to have tunneled into the side of the Great Pyramid around 820 AD.
The Robber's Tunnel?
Exactly. Legend has it he found a vessel with 1,000 coins, conveniently covering the cost of opening it, though some speculate he might have planted them to appease his frustrated workers.
Plausible. There's also the Coptic legend of the antediluvian king, Surid ibn Saluk, who supposedly built the pyramids to house all Egyptian knowledge before the Great Flood. Medieval Arab polymaths like Abd al-Latif al-Baghdadi praised the engineering but debated its pre-flood origins, while al-Makrisi confirmed al-Mamun's breach and the sarcophagus as a grave. These stories, though varied, all highlight the enduring human fascination and speculation about what secrets the pyramid might hold.
So, if it wasn't slaves, but an organized workforce, the next incredible question becomes, how exactly did they achieve this feat, moving millions of stones without modern machinery? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of how this incredible structure was built.
Right, and what's truly fascinating here is how modern archaeological discoveries have really dispelled those ancient myths. The ancient Greeks, like Herodotus, believed slave labor was used. However, modern discoveries at nearby workers' camps and ancient Egyptian documentation strongly suggest it was built by thousands of conscripted laborers, not slaves, Hebrew or otherwise. These were skilled and unskilled Egyptians from all over the country who perhaps volunteered to pay off debt, maybe for community service, or were compensated for their time. More like a national project.
So it's more like a massive organized public works project, perhaps even a source of national unity. That feels very different.
Precisely. And the annual Nile flood played a crucial role in the logistics. For 2 months a year, when farmlands were idle due to the inundation, the pharaoh offered food for work and the promise of favored treatment in the afterlife.
The religious angle, too.
Definitely. Tens of thousands would gather to transport blocks that a permanent crew had quarried throughout the rest of the year. They used sleds, which were actually better suited than wheeled vehicles for moving heavy objects over shifting sand.
Right, wheels would just sink.
Exactly. And causeways were often lubricated with water to ease the pull uphill. Quite ingenious, really.
That is an ingenious solution. But how did they cut these millions of stones, some weighing up to 80 tons for the king's chamber, with just, what, copper tools?
Well, primarily, local nummulitic limestone, that's a type of limestone rich in tiny coin-shaped fossils from the Giza plateau, was used for the core. The dazzling white limestone for the casing came from Tura, about 10 kilometers southeast.
Okay.
And the hard granite for the internal chambers, like the king's chamber, had to be transported from Aswan over 900 kilometers south.
900 kilometers.
Yeah.
Down the Nile, presumably.
Yes. And the Diary of Mirror, which you mentioned, discovered in 2013, actually documents the transportation of these white limestone blocks from Tura to Giza, mentioning the pyramid by its original name, Akhet Khufu, or Horizon of Khufu, dozens of times.
That's such a groundbreaking piece of evidence. For listeners who might not be familiar, what exactly is the Diary of Mirror, and why is it considered such a game changer?
Well, it's a collection of papyrus fragments, essentially a daily logbook kept by an official named Mur, who was overseeing a work gang.
Okay, like a foreman's log.
Kind of, yeah. Discovered in a cave near the Red Sea, it provides direct, first-person accounts of transporting those crucial white limestone blocks from the Tura quarries to the Giza site. It's like finding a 4,500-year-old construction manifest offering concrete proof of the organized, large-scale supply chain.
Amazing.
As for cutting the stone, a stonemason named Frank Burgos conducted an experiment based on a discovered Khufu quarry, using replicas of ancient tools, hardened arsenic copper chisels, wooden mallets, ropes, and stone tools.
Right.
4 workers took 4 days, working 6 hours a day, to excavate a 2.5-ton block. Crucially, they found that wetting the stone sped up the process 6 times.
6 times faster just by adding water.
Yeah. Based on this, Burgos extrapolates that about 3,500 quarrymen could have produced the 250 blocks per day needed to complete the pyramid in about 27 years. It sounds plausible.
That's an incredible testament to their efficiency and the sheer human effort involved.
Yeah.
And the precision of their construction is legendary. How remarkable was it, really, even by modern standards?
Oh, it's stunning. Flinders Petrie, who first precisely measured the pyramid back in the 1880s, noted that many casing and inner chamber blocks fit together with astonishing precision, joints averaging only 0.5 millimeters wide.
Half a millimeter, that's like paper thin.
Pretty much, about the thickness of a credit card. This contrasts sharply with the roughly shaped core blocks, where rubble was inserted into larger gaps and mortar used primarily just to bind outer layers and fill joints. Less precise on the inside, very precise on the outside, and key chambers.
And the alignment to cardinal directions is always a point of wonder. How on earth did they achieve that without modern instruments, given such accuracy?
Yeah, the sides deviate on average only 3 minutes and 38 seconds of arc from true north. An astonishing feat.
Tiny deviation.
Several methods have been proposed. The solar gnomon method, which involved tracking the shadow of a vertical rod at precise moments. The pole star method, where they'd align with the seemingly stationary star Thuban, which was the pole star back then.
Oh, okay.
Or the simultaneous transit method, observing when specific stars like Mizar and Kochab cross the same celestial meridian. Each implies an incredibly advanced astronomical and surveying understanding. And the remarkable thing is, we don't have definitive proof for any single method. It might have been a combination. That only deepens the mystery of their incredible precision.
Right. Speaking of casing stones, the pyramid isn't smooth white anymore, sadly. What happened to that beautiful outer layer?
Yeah, it's a shame. The pyramid was once entirely cased in smooth, angled white Tura limestone. These precisely worked blocks were carefully fitted with mortar. Unfinished casing blocks at other pyramids suggest the faces were actually smoothed after the stones were laid.
Oh, interesting. So they built it slightly rough, then finished it in place.
Seems like it, yeah. Meaning the pyramid would have just glowed in the desert sun. But most of this casing was stripped away in the Middle Ages, partly due to earthquakes loosening the stones, and also carted away by figures like the Bari Sultan al-Nasir ad-Din al-Hassan in 1356 for use in building structures in Cairo.
Recycled into Cairo. Okay. And what about the missing tip, the pyramidion? Was it ever there? What was it made of?
Good question. The pyramid was once topped by a capstone called a pyramidion. Its material is debated, but known 4th dynasty pyramidia were white limestone, not gilded.
Not gold, then.
Probably not gold, no. Evidence of gilded capstones only appears from the 5th dynasty onward, so it's unlikely Khufu's was golden. This capstone was already lost in classical antiquity, and over time, more stones were removed from the peak, making the pyramid about 8 meters shorter today than it originally was.
Right. Now let's go inside. What secrets do the chambers, passages, and shafts hold? And what's the latest we've learned from, exploring them?
Okay, the interior is a marvel of engineering and a fascinating puzzle in itself. It consists of 3 main chambers, the king's, queen's, and the subterranean chamber, along with the spectacular grand gallery, and various corridors and shafts. Similar to the exterior, none of the interior walls were decorated or inscribed, apart from some work gang marks found scrawled on blocks in the relieving chambers above the king's chamber. Basically, builder's graffiti.
Right, quarry marks and things. So where do you even get in? There's the famous robber's tunnel, but that wasn't the original entrance, was it?
That's correct. The original entrance is on the north side, about 17 meters above the pyramid's base level. It was likely concealed by a movable stone, as the ancient Greek geographer Strabo suggested.
Like a secret door?
Pretty much. The robber's tunnel is traditionally attributed to Caliph al-Mamun's workmen around 820 AD, who supposedly tunneled in and discovered the ascending passage. However, many scholars now contend this story might be apocryphal.
Oh.
Yeah, they believe the tunnel was likely carved much earlier by looters, perhaps in the first intermediate period or Middle Kingdom, then resealed, and al-Mamun's expedition merely cleared it out again.
So maybe not the first ones in after all.
Probably not. This highlights how consistently, despite monumental efforts, ancient looters managed to breach these sophisticated defenses throughout history. It's almost a parallel story to the construction itself.
Fascinating. So from that original entrance, where do these passages lead? Take us down.
Okay. From the original entrance, the descending passage slopes down through the masonry and deep into the bedrock below the pyramid, eventually reaching the subterranean chamber.
Right at the bottom.
Exactly. This chamber is the lowest of the 3, dug directly into the bedrock, and notably it remained unfinished, rough-hewn. Egyptologist Ludwig Borchardt suggested it was originally planned to be Khufu's burial place, but then abandoned for a higher, more central chamber later in the construction.
A change of plan, maybe? And what about those famous shafts in the queen's and king's chambers? They've been the source of so much speculation, especially with recent discoveries using robots.
Ah, yes. These shafts are where the pyramid truly continues to guard its secrets. In the Queen's Chamber, shafts were discovered way back in 1872 by Wayneman Dixon. They didn't connect to the exterior or even, apparently, to the chamber itself originally, and their precise purpose remains unknown.
Still a mystery.
Still largely a mystery. Dixon found a diorite ball, a bronze hook, and that piece of cedar wood in one. The cedar wood, which, as we discussed, was radiocarbon, dated to be over 500 years older than Khufu himself. Strange little objects.
Beyond traditional archaeology, Technological breakthroughs, particularly with robotics, have offered entirely new perspectives inside the pyramid. What have these explorations revealed that we couldn't have known before?
Some significant breakthroughs indeed. In 1993, Rudolf Gantenbrink's robot, UPOS-2, explored the southern shaft of the Queen's Chamber.
I remember watching that.
Yeah, it discovered a limestone door with 2 copper handles. Very intriguing. Then, a 2002 National Geographic robot drilled a small hole through it, only to find another slab behind it.
Another door.
Essentially, yeah. Then, in 2011, the JEDI project used a fiber-optic micro-snake camera to look behind the first door, and they found something amazing.
What was it?
They discovered hieroglyphic characters written in red paint, which Egyptian mathematics researcher Luca Miatello read as 121, likely indicating the shaft's intended length in royal cubits.
Wow, actual writing hidden away.
Exactly. They also found the reverse side of the first door was finished and polished, suggesting it wasn't just blocking debris, but served a more specific, symbolic, perhaps ritualistic reason.
These discoveries of hidden doors and deciphered markings feel like we're actively peeling back layers of the pyramid's design. What more can these findings imply about its original purpose? Were they just for air?
Well, it suggests there's still much to uncover about the pyramid's design and purpose, particularly the ritualistic aspects associated with the ascension of the king's spirit. Many Egyptologists now believe these shafts, including the ones in the king's chamber, were intended for the pharaoh's soul, or Ba, to ascend to the circumpolar stars, the imperishable stars.
A spiritual purpose.
Exactly. Rather than simply for ventilation, especially since the king's chamber air shafts were found not to point to any specific celestial objects anyway, due to their slightly irregular paths, they're more likely about spiritual cosmology than just air circulation.
Right. Let's move up to the Grand Gallery. It sounds like an architectural marvel in itself, this grand passage leading deeper into the pyramid.
It truly is a spectacular example of stonemasonry and engineering. Continuing the slope of the ascending passage, it rises 21 meters with walls made of highly polished limestone, its unique corbelled design.
Explain corbelled.
Okay, so each successive layer of stone on the walls projects slightly inward, creating a kind of stepped arch shape overhead. This, along with its ratchet roof, were engineered to support the immense weight above and prevent cumulative pressure from collapsing the passage.
Clever engineering.
Very. Its floor also has these mysterious slots and niches along the sides, leading to theories like Jean-Pierre Houdin's, suggesting they held a timber frame, perhaps used with the trolley system, to pull the heavy granite blocks for the king's chamber up the pyramid during construction.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then there's that enormous, newly discovered space above the Grand Gallery, the Big Void. That sounds like something straight out of an adventure movie. What do we know about that?
Well, the Scan Pyramids project, using muon radiography, which is a technique that uses cosmic ray particles to basically image through dense structures, like a giant X-ray.
Right, muons.
They used that to discover the Scan Pyramids Big Void in 2017. It's at least 30 meters long and seems to have a similar cross-section to the Grand Gallery below it.
Wow. And its purpose?
Its exact purpose is unknown and it's currently inaccessible. While someone like Zahi Hawass speculates it might have just been a construction gap, maybe to relieve pressure over the Grand Gallery, the Japanese research team who found it stated it's completely different from previously identified construction spaces, indicating it's still a significant mystery and a tantalizing new area for future exploration, maybe with new robotic techniques.
Fascinating. Okay, the Great Pyramid wasn't just a standalone structure, was it? It was part of a much larger funerary complex. What else surrounded Khufu's pyramid?
That's right. The complex included the Pyramid Temple directly to the east, which has largely disappeared today, unfortunately, and a causeway leading down towards the Nile floodplain to the Valley Temple, which is mostly unexcavated, still buried under sand, and the modern village.
Still more to find there, then.
Potentially a lot. To the east, there's also a large cemetery for officials and family members, notably the intact but strangely empty tomb of Queen Hedephirs I, who is Khufu's mother. Her sarcophagus was there, sealed but empty. Her actual body and goods were likely reburied somewhere else, maybe even in one of the small pyramids.
And the smaller pyramids nearby that we often see in photos with the Great Pyramid, the Queen's Pyramids.
Exactly. On the southern end of the east side are 4 subsidiary pyramids. 3 are traditionally known as the Queen's Pyramids, likely for Khufu's principal wives and maybe sisters, and a 4th, much smaller satellite pyramid, sometimes called G1D, was so ruined its existence wasn't even suspected until the 1990s. Its purpose is debated maybe for the King's Ka statue or a symbolic burial.
And the boats. It's still astonishing that there are actual full-size boats buried right next to the pyramid. What were they for?
Yes, absolutely fascinating. There are 3 boat-shaped pits to the east, empty now, and 2 long rectangular sealed pits to the south of the pyramid. One of these southern pits contained the famous Khufu ship.
The solar boat?
Often called that, yeah. A perfectly preserved ceremonial cedarwood vessel that has been meticulously restored over decades and was recently moved to the Grand Egyptian Museum.
Right, I saw that move.
The second southern boat pit remained unopened until excavation began in 2011, and they're still working on conserving the timbers from that second boat.
Another boat.
Yep. The discovery of Djedefre's cartouche, that's Khufu's successor on the slabs covering these pits, suggests he was responsible for the burial, indicating their purpose might have been symbolic solar barks for the king's journey in the afterlife, traveling with the sun god Ra.
Incredible preservation.
Well,
Lastly, what about the people who built it? We talked about them not being slaves. Was there a specialized pyramid town for them?
Mark Leaner discovered a workers' town, often called the Lost City, just outside the massive stone wall of the Crow, southeast of the plateau. It's dated mainly to the reigns of Khafre and Menkaure, Khufu's successors, who built the other 2 big pyramids.
Okay, so maybe not for Khufu's workers.
Possibly used by them too, but certainly by the later ones. It contained these long, barracks-like galleries that could house thousands, plus bakeries, fish processing areas, a whole support system. However, recent discoveries of a thriving port nearby suggest this main town might have housed soldiers and sailors, perhaps the permanent staff. The actual pyramid workers, the conscripts, might have camped more temporarily on the ramps or at nearby quarries closer to the actual construction site during the inundation season.
A whole ecosystem built around the pyramids. And finally, the question of looting. It seems incredible that something so massive and seemingly impenetrable could be plundered. How did that happen, and when?
It is truly a testament to the persistence and maybe ingenuity of ancient tomb robbers. Authors like Bob Breyer and Hoyt Hobbs claim all the pyramids were robbed by the New Kingdom period, maybe even earlier.
All of them?
Pretty much, yeah. Joyce Teitsley specifically states the Great Pyramid is known to have been opened and emptied by the Middle Kingdom long before Caliph al-Mamun's expedition in the 9th century AD.
So thousands of years before him.
Likely, yes. Strabo's mention of a movable stone entrance back in Roman times suggests the pyramid was entered by robbers after the Old Kingdom collapsed, perhaps sealed, and then reopened multiple times throughout antiquity. This raises an important ongoing question. Despite the monumental effort to secure it, how did ancient looters consistently manage to breach these sophisticated defenses and empty these tombs so effectively? The methods of the ancient tomb robbers are almost as mysterious in their own way as those of the pyramid builders themselves.
That's a great point. We've journeyed through nearly 5 millennia of history, from the initial construction to the fantastical legends and the painstaking archaeological discoveries of today. What stands out to you most about this deep dive into the Great Pyramid?
What's truly fascinating here is how much the narrative of the Great Pyramid has evolved and actually continues to evolve. From those ancient Greek misconceptions of, tyrannical rulers and slave labor, to the incredibly precise scientific dating and the discovery of the highly organized, compensated workforce, our understanding is constantly being refined by new evidence. Right. The enduring mystery isn't just how it was built with such mind-bending precision, but maybe why the ancients invested such immense resources and ingenuity into a monument that even now continues to guard its deepest secrets, like the big void and those enigmatic, maybe spirit-channeling shafts. There's still so much we don't fully grasp.
It certainly makes you wonder about the layers of history, the stories we tell ourselves about the past, and just how much more there is to uncover, even in structures that have stood for thousands of years right before our very eyes. The Great Pyramid stands as a monument not just to Khufu, but perhaps to the endless human quest for understanding and maybe even eternity itself.